Hi there, welcome to Boat's Memory Method, Journeys of the Heart. And today we are going to share true stories of caregiving burden and burnout, and hopefully bring you some hope as you're walking this journey as a caregiver yourself. Janie, thank you for joining me. My wonderful assistant, Janie. We've come a long ways, and we both have personal stories, very different personal stories of caregiving, and that has inspired us to be where we are today.
Yes.
And I know you've shared a little bit with me, but recently I've learned a little bit more about how you ended up being in the role of caregiver for your dad. And I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about your story.
We began to see that my father was struggling a little bit cognitively when actually I had shared in a previous video that he became a victim of a scammer. So when that took place, that was a rather long journey of about a year where he was really not listening to us, and this
Lack of insight
yes.
of that he's not making the right decisions.
Exactly.
Didn't want to give up that control of independence.
There's also a predisposed disposition of my father in that he was a very trusting man, very naive and very trusting.
Gentle, yeah.
Very trusting, very naive. So he was the perfect,
Victim,
exactly. We tried to get the police involved. Unfortunately, because at that point he still was cognitively functioning so highly, we really didn't have any legal ability to intervene in that situation.
Do you think that sometimes as caregivers we look at that situation and we want to make excuses for this was his personality, this is something that could have happened anyway, rather than leaning into, well, maybe there's cognitive changes? That's a hard line for many people to feel if this exploitation, which is a very hot topic right now in dementia care, in elder law even, is how do we know when to intervene? Can you speak to that a little bit and how you finally decided?
Right. I can definitely see where there becomes a tendency, a tendency oftentimes for family members to look to help excuse their person who's beginning to struggle. However, I will say I could see my dad possibly have been being a victim at any point in his life because of his personality.
Yes.
I also can see how the generation that my dad came out of is a very trusting generation.
Right.
People did not there were not what there is today in this world.
Right.
People would shake hands on a contract.
Right.
So it was a different mentality that they came out of. So I think that can play a part. But I do not think we were oblivious or naive to that he was struggling.
Gotcha.
We could definitely see it. And my sisters and I did have conversations about how he was not making good decisions.
Right.
So we did begin to help him with managing his money.
Right.
And regarding the scammer, that did finally come to a head where he was confronted with a direct lie from the scammer that really opened his eyes to what was happening.
Right.
And so that finally ended. And then what happened in order for him to need care was the first incident that happened was he actually was doing some work on the side where he was raking people's yards for extra money.
Mm-hmm.
And he became severely dehydrated and very confused.
Yes, because he forgot to drink water, forgot the timeline.
Yes.
We see that's what we see even at the high level. We see that in ourselves. We got so involved in a task maybe or doing something, and we put off certain things like going to the bathroom or drinking water. And then suddenly you're so thirsty and you realize, oh my goodness, it's afternoon, I've had nothing to drink.
Right.
And so much more for someone. I can just see this in raking outside in the heat of South Carolina, and in the humidity, and forgetting the time going by and not hydrating and just moving on to the next thing, and then becoming dehydrated and confused. Oh, what a common story for a person's living with dementia.
So he ended up having to go to the emergency room and be rehydrated. I do believe they kept him overnight.
Wow.
So and shortly after that, he ended up having a minor surgery And going under the anesthesia, honestly, it really knocked him for a loop.
Oh my goodness.
So at that point, he really could not go back home and take care of himself, and it was very evident. He was extremely confused and following that surgery because of the anesthesia.
Yes, and now there are some things we can do. You can go to your physician and advocate for your person and asking for alternatives such as a spinal block or a local block, not getting full anesthesia. There's even some clinics associated to some hospitals, like here in Florida, Shands, where you can have a consult with anesthesiologists that specialize in dementia care before you get elective surgeries. And we highly recommend that because Janie really, through the advocacy, she struggled with the advocacy for your father to not use anesthesia due to the fact that it put his cognitive level, his functioning lower every time that he received anesthesia. And it's important for our listeners to know that that's another piece of advocacy where you can step up and decide not to have anesthesia for your loved one because of the cognitive side effects that we are not aware of.
Yes. So at that point, he did live with my sister for a few months, and I came to visit and help. And I could tell that my sister was very overwhelmed.
Right.
He was definitely needing a lot of help and redirection with things and was experiencing a lot of confusion. And it was very overwhelming for her. So I did offer to take him back to Florida.
Right. And she has no healthcare experience, right? We'd like to highlight that. You are a healthcare worker. At that point, how much experience have you had as in an occupational therapy profession?
Oh, goodness. At that point, I had probably
over 20 years.
15 years of experience, I believe.
And a lot of that was with senior care and with dementia care.
Correct. Yes. So I was completely comfortable bringing him home. My husband had always said if that was needed, he welcomed him. And my husband was at home most of the day.
So great support system that you had able to invite your father into the folds of your home. Mm-hmm. And you had 2 young children too at the time.
Yes, I did. And I looked at that as opportunity, honestly. I feel like that is a very important piece.
Of community.
I think that whatever you are facing in helping and with a family member with dementia, that you have a choice. You have a choice to either embrace it or to just do it out of duty.
Right.
And I knew that if I embraced it, then it was going to reap good things for my family and for my dad.
Right.
Even though there were definitely difficulties.
Right. And part of it is you had insight in the challenges that might come because you've already served that population. So you were at the place where you could set yourself up from a point of knowledge and experience for success, and you recognized the barriers that may be there and what you had to overcome in order to integrate your dad with his cognitive challenges into your household. Also, we talk about that a lot. We will make a segment on that. Is community, dementia community, having a dementia community, whether it's your immediate family or friends, and how do we include our person into our community so that they feel respected and valued and loved. And the other piece of the dementia community is cross-generational connection. So we maintain cross-generational connections, in this case, grandfather with grandkids, father with daughter, father with community. Yes. And I would love for you to touch on the positive story of how you incorporated your dad in the community.
Oh, okay. So, well, to finish that piece of the story, my dad actually did take a good probably 4 or 5 months to get back to his norm, and he did go back to live independently for a while.
Oh, that's right.
But then within the next few years, he just began to have more confusion and more struggling, and we really knew that he did not need to be driving.
So you moved him close to you initially, but he was independent, living independent.
He just lived with me temporarily and then went back to South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
But then I did, probably 2 years later, we did bring him into our home permanently.
Okay.
He first went to live with my sister again, and then we just decided this was the best situation. He did come to live with me permanently, and at that point, I felt like it was a good opportunity for my children to get to know him better. He had,
How old were they at that
oh
time?
goodness, let's see. So I think Jessa was probably 8th grade, and Micah was 5th grade, something
Yes,
like that.
yes. So early teen years.
Yes.
Yes,
Middle school and teen, yeah.
yes,
So we had, so that was, the other grandchildren grew up around him.
yes.
So he had much closer relationships with them. So I
Yes.
felt like it was a good opportunity
For them
for
to get
him
closer.
and for my children. But one of the things about my dad is that he was a minister of music in the Baptist church. And when I say my dad sang every single day of his life, my dad sang every single day of his life. I grew up with him singing throughout our home every day. So it was such a passion for him. Music
Yes.
was such a passion that I thought, I really want these last days to be very meaningful for him. And I knew
Right.
that music would be a big part of that.
Yes.
So what we did was we tried out for the community chorus with the university here, the University of
Awesome.
Florida Community Chorus with Dr. Kessling, and my dad auditioned, and he immediately got in, and I decided, well, I've got to bring him and take him home. I might as well join as well. So we both joined together, and we did that for over a year, and it was truly probably one of the biggest highlights of my dad's life.
Such beautiful memories that you made together.
Yes.
Intentionally creating
Yes.
an opportunity for him to be involved in community, to find joy, to have value and purpose. What a
Yes.
beautiful example.
Yes.
I do want to go back for our audience, though, just to highlight with Janie's journey that there's no one solution that's going to last through the whole journey of dementia. You need to be flexible in order to survive as a dementia caregiver. You need to be flexible in the choices that you make. And as Janie has demonstrated, that was supporting her dad through different seasons where he was living independent, then living with a sister, then living a little bit with Janie, then living independent again, living with a sister again, and finally coming back to Janie.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to highlight is that there's not just one solution in one situation that's going to work. You have to be flexible in your situation and almost live day by day.
Yes.
Make the best of what you have for this day, but knowing that that may not continue to work in the next weeks or months, and that you need to have that flexibility to ask for help, to make adjustments, and then also to recognize the strength of your community, of where you can tap in, which family member, which sibling is going to be the best option for that person to thrive.
Yeah.
And that's an ongoing discovery process, I feel like. And sometimes I think as families, we get stuck on one solution. We need to find that one great thing that's going to make this a good situation. And I think that is a false perception, because dementia is a progressive journey. And I think the biggest challenge I can give our audience and all of our caregivers, first off, find your dementia community. But secondly, how can you be flexible in order to meet your person's need? And it's not going to look the same in each season.
Right. And I also think it's very important for families to really talk about these things, not outside of the crisis.
Yes.
To really,
Before
have those
there's a
conversations.
crisis.
Have those conversations.
Yes.
and talk about where would it be best, and find places to agree.
Right.
Fortunately, my sisters and I, we really did agree through the whole process. And
Right.
I know that that's not the case with all families.
Right.
But I think that when you're talking about the person that needs the care, then sometimes that's just the way it is. It may be that one or two people are stepping up and other people are not.
Not correct.
But, that's why I encourage, just embrace wherever you are. And know, for me, I knew that whatever I did for my dad, I would never look back with regret.
Right.
And so it was all worth it to me.
Right. And you looked at it as a journey, and looking at it as, I want this to be positive as possible, and knowing that you can create good memories through that journey, that there is hope, that there are solutions, there are resources, and do not have a preoccupation with the idea of a negative idea of what it's going to look like, or an overly positive idea. The truth is somewhere in the middle.
Right.
But the hope is that there are solutions, there are resources, and there are ways to create meaning and joy through this journey. Janie, thank you for sharing your true story on this Journeys of the Heart. We would love for you to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Send us your questions so we can make content that will answer where you are at, or go to our website, boatesmemorymethod.com. That is BOTES, and you can sign up for our free newsletter there. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you, Janie.
You're welcome.